So I was there. Did you get all the gasoline out of your private parts?
I thank you for asking. We're live, Scott. Okay. Okay. Welcome to 1,000 Ways to be a Champion for Children. My name is Alan, past, present, and future. My name is Alan Friesen. Levi Cox is supposed to be my guest tonight, but he has had some challenge in his life. Maybe he'll join us. He might. He's kind of scrambling, but regardless, we have Scott Sweetman here, and Scott Sweetman knows much. He's like, he knows when I have tough questions, I ask Scott. Scott always knows something about my problems. So thank you, Scott, for joining me. So I don't know if you're familiar, but here's what we're doing with this show. We are trying to prevent and reduce the impact of adverse childhood experiences. And we want to address adult survivors of childhood trauma and encourage them to go and readdress that, to feel it, heal it, and move on to a better life is basically what we're hoping to do. So we're hoping to prevent, reduce the impact of, provide self-regulation or tools or tips, tricks to keep yourself well in these very challenging times. So those are kind of what we're looking to do. The hope is that we're going to be able to have a bunch of caring human beings like you and me, Scott, that will go and spend some time with kiddos in our community to help them stay strong, stay safe, and heal if in fact that they weren't able to prevent. They're not in a situation where they could prevent that. So now you, my friend, you are somebody who has lived experience with childhood trauma. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem. And I think that trauma is misunderstood. I think that there's an image, a rather sort of binary image of what trauma is. And I think a lot of people have experienced childhood trauma in a lot of different ways.
Definitely.
And I think that part of that is being patient and understanding that, you know, the people that have gone through that trauma often haven't dealt with it or haven't worked it through. They've compensated and, you know, they've made arrangements. And, you know, for me, my mother was married twice. And her second husband was abusive to me. He used to take great offense to most things I did. And on a good day, I'd get a good slap across the face or a punch in the head. And on a bad day, I'd get a belt or a belt buckle on my naked backside, which was pretty traumatic at that time.
Definitely.
That ended up with me leaving that house when I was 13. I moved in with my father. My parents were divorced, so I moved in with my biological father at that time. And I was very fortunate. I went off to college at a young age in the US. So I did go through that. And later in life, I worked with, you know, a lot of youth myself. When I went to university, I worked with some of the social service providers here in Lethbridge and Coaldale and surrounding area with teens who were in. And it's difficult to scale these things, right? So for me, you know, what I went through, I always think is far less than, you know, people I know or people that I've helped or worked with. But we never really know how bad that damage is to that person. And when you're a little person, and I wasn't that young, I was 10 or 11 when it started and, you know, 13 when I left, is you don't really have a context to put it in. And I think that's, you know, as an adult, we have some context. We can say, oh, well, this, and, you know, we can intellectualize it. We can pick up books and read about it. We can, you know, observe other people's situation. But when you're a child in that situation, it's traumatic because you don't have anywhere to put that pain or that not understanding. You know, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? What have I done? What's precipitated this situation? And I think that's the hardest. I've talked to a lot of people that have been through different things in an informal way. And, you know, like you say, I talk to lots of people and lots of people talk to me. And that's one of the questions that I think that most often comes up is that feeling of, why is this happening? What did I do to make this happen? Why, and I'm not, like I said, obviously there's people that have gone through far worse than getting smacked around a bit, but there's that commonality. I think, I've talked to people who've been raped. One of my good friends in college had been raped twice by different men, and because it happened twice, people blamed her, and it must be her fault. And I don't know how walking down the street, which the first time she got raped, that's how it happened, was her fault at all. But at that time, people weren't so woke on the whole idea of, that the victim is the victim, and that they're not asking for it in any way. And
Scott, can I just interject one thing too? I like your part about where, you don't understand this. You're a kiddo, right? And then you don't understand why this is happening. And most kids come to the conclusion it must be them, that they are faulty somehow, they are deficient, they are not enough, right? Absolutely. And so then they hold on to that blame, and then that blame, of course, impairs their ability to have good relationships, to even value themselves to as much as they should, right? Because they, as a little person, had a belief that they somehow had caused that, right? And in the case of your friend who's been raped, one thing that I don't think a lot of people know is about a dissociative response, right? And a dissociative response, for those who don't know, Scott knows this, I'm sure, but with a dissociative response, basically what happens is your body does the math, and your body says, oh, you're getting a beating, there's no way out of this, right? Or you're going to get raped, or this is going to happen. So your body just floods your brain, triggers the release of endogenous opioids, which just take away the pain, basically dull the pain. And then a person in that state is going to be they're not going to scream out, they're not going to cry, they're going to just just kind of zone out and wait for the pain to stop, basically. So in that case, sometimes a woman will blame herself, well, not just a woman, but often in a rape case, the woman would blame herself that she didn't scream out, she didn't cry, she didn't yell, those kind of things, but that was her body protecting her. So no shame, no blame for her. No shame, no blame for you, little Scott, because obviously you didn't deserve to get smacked and beat and pushed through walls and all the things that you're making it very, very, you're sanitizing that, Scott. Your abuse was fairly significant, it sounds like to me.
Well, so some days I'll confess I probably did deserve some of the anger. I don't know if I deserved it expressed that way.
Yeah.
As a dad myself, I know that teenagers can be extremely difficult, but at that time, the problems, now I can look back and say the problems weren't mine. And, in this case, there was a history and all sorts of things that, of course, as a kid, I had no way of knowing. And like, as you said, and my friend in college, one of the reasons that, even people that were in her family accused her is because she didn't show emotion. She didn't get upset. She didn't cry. Exactly as you said, she was in a dissociative state. And, when she talked about it, when she first talked about it, you couldn't tell if she was joking or not. I remember the first time, her and I were having a drink and talking, and we went to college together, and, she was saying, yeah, after I was raped, and then as a kid, it just didn't, like, there was no emotion attached to it. It was just a statement as in her conversation. And I remember thinking, was she joking? Is this like a black humor thing? Am I missing something here? And then she went on to talk about the second time she was raped and how, and then we got talking about it as, sort of evolved. And exactly as you said, she was aware of it. But the way she got through the pain was her body just took over and numbed everything, even when she talked about it later. And I know that for her, that was one of the things the police and the other, her family involved, they expected a person that had been raped to be very emotional and crying and screaming and, acting like they do on TV.
Right.
And she just sort of went blank-faced and quiet and stoic. And they interpreted that as guilt somehow on her part. And yeah, it was a really terrible situation. So I think that's something that people have to keep in mind. But definitely, I remember hiding under my bed and asking myself over and over, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? And just, begging and praying that it would stop, and or that I would figure out what I could do to make it stop.
Right.
And there's just no answer. You don't have an answer because you're not the problem, and
No, you're not the problem.
You're not the originator of those feelings. So,
Hey,
yeah,
Scott, let me interject this with you. I like, sorry, can I share something with you right now? Sorry to stop you.
absolutely. You
Yeah.
bet. Yeah.
My friend David Irvin, last night I was listening to a thing he said, and it really caught my attention. He said, violence is what happens when we don't know what to do with our suffering. And I thought, oh, that's a brilliant insight. Like your stepdad, like, I'm not saying his behavior was any way made sense, but
Yep.
for him, he would also have been somebody who had some suffering his life that he didn't know what to do with it. And what he was taught probably was you beat kids because that's what he was beat when he was a kid. Right. And that's
Absolutely. And I don't, and this is going to sound very strange, maybe. I don't believe he's a bad man. I don't believe that, like you said, I don't think that in his mind he was perpetuating evil. I think that he genuinely thought he was teaching me a lesson and teaching me how to be a man. Whatever that meant to him is different than it means to me. And yeah, I think that, and it's interesting. It's a little bit sad, but I'm sure you find it too when you get involved in what we're involved in and helping other people and trying to protect other people and work with youth and people that have been in situations. It's far more prevalent than people think. And you start, I can't really even quickly count the number of people that have talked to me about being raped or abused or gone through those things. And I guess that's why I say that what happened to me, I a little bit in context, and it could be some deflection and all sorts of psychological coping mechanisms, but there's a lot of misunderstanding, and I think that people really just need to do what we're doing now, talk about it and saying, I'm not trying to victim blame, and I'm not trying to say, oh, poor me. We just need to realize these things are happening, and the only way they're going to stop is through education and through getting help when you need help and not letting it build up inside. And I think the pandemic, as of course, we work with teachers a lot and everything that's going on there, and the kids are in a school and then they're out of school and they're going to be back out of school, and of course that's upsetting for parents and it's upsetting for the kids, but I don't think people are really thinking about how upsetting that is for teachers. Most teachers get in that job because they want to help kids, because they want to help kids become the best people they can. And all of this in and out and changing formats and all of these things, that puts people that genuinely care under a lot of stress. And so I think that everyone needs to take a little extra energy to care right now, and to spend a little time being well and taking care of people around you, and just spending that little extra time, because I think our society's under pressure in a new and unknown way with what's going on. What do you think, Al? What have you been feeling during this?
Well, yeah, like I agree entirely that I think this is the time, if at all possible, that if we can contribute to life affirming conversations, life affirming experiences, I think that'd be real important, because COVID is a life denying situation, right?
Yeah.
All of the social distancing and the not hugging, not being together like we normally would, those are life denying type things, right? So life affirming things, and just basically having conversations where people can express their frustrations and concerns and challenges and that kind of thing, I think is really valuable. And just to know that somebody is concerned and somebody can empathize with your situation, right? I think that's huge. And because I think, man, collectively, if we can have life affirming like experiences or conversations and bump up some peace and some joy and some love and some gratitude in these times, I think that's super, super important for all of us, right? So, and there's where we can make a difference, right, in helping each other. So
there's a song, and I know you love music, and I listen to you sing whenever I have an opportunity. And there's a song, I think Tori Amos does it, called The Closing of the Year. And one of the lines in that is, if I cannot bring you joy, let me bring you hope. And you know, I've really, you're saying about, you know, people being happy and healthy and hopeful has really struck a chord with me, because I think that often we can't take suffering away from people. We can't undo things that have been done. We can't necessarily, you know, feed every child and protect every, you know, person that gets assaulted or raped. But what we have to do is we have to bring hope to those people, and we have to keep that hope alive in ourselves. And I think that that ties in with faith. And, you know, I know that we have a lot of faith communities in Southern Alberta, and a lot of them feel set upon by the rules, and, you know, their usual worshiping and communities are disrupted. And I think that we have to maintain that faith and hope, even through the disruption, and even through the challenges that we're facing and the unknown. I was reading a post by someone that just found out they had COVID-19. They were tested positive, and they had low-level pneumonia. And he posted, you know, did he believe that COVID-19 was real? Yes. Does he believe that you have to wear masks? No. Does, you know, and he went through this whole thing. And it was really about, you know, the fact that now his situation has shifted. Now that he has COVID-19, really what he can hang on to is the hope that he's going to get better, and that he won't spread it to anyone. And that's what he's got left. You know, he's faced with the fact that he's contracted it, and it's unknown, right?
Yeah.
How people respond to it. And I really think that we need to spread that hope. And that's the one thing that we can give people when we can't give them anything else, is that hope that somebody understands them and somebody cares. And, you know, that somebody understands it's not their fault.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, and the one thing that I like about this show a lot is the hope that it brings to not only the kids, but to the adults. And, you know, as you know, when somebody looks you in the eye and tells you something horrible that happened to them, it tears away at your own energy and your own positivity. And it's necessary, because you're giving some of that back to them in the form of hope, I believe.
And so, Scott, sometimes, as you know, you try to help and it doesn't work. What was your experience in trying to help?
Yeah, exactly. And I've, you know, I think I talked with you a bit about it before. And I know I used to be a riding instructor for a number of years. I grew up on a horse ranch where we showed and bred horses. I had a lot of students. I used to teach competitive riding, and I had one young girl. She would have been about 17, and I was teaching, and she and you know, I asked her what's wrong, in, you know, those sort of stock answers. And you know, I'll never forget, she just sort of took in a big breath, and then she said, my stepdad's raping me, molesting me. And of course, I was only 19, 20 at the time, maybe. And I, you know, immediately I thought, you know, what can I do here? And I asked her, you know, I said, do you want a place to stay? You know, we had bunkhouses and things on the farm. Finding a place to stay was never a problem around our house. And, you know, and I said, I'll take you home tonight, because it was her stepdad that picked her up usually. And so I said, I'll take you back. And so I took him back to the house, and the mom met us there. She was there, and the stepdad wasn't there. And, you know, I just said to her, I said, you know, it came out to me tonight that, you know, your daughter's being molested or raped by your husband. And I don't know what I thought I was going to achieve. I think that I had sort of a hero mentality, that I was going to help this girl and solve a problem for her. And the mom looked at me and just carried on with our conversation like I'd said nothing. And it dawned on me that the mom knew, and she was okay with that. And of course, I didn't know how to deal with that. And I responded as one might. And, how could this be? How could you know? How could you let this happen? And, her answer was to me that I had no idea, their situation or what situation she was in. And her husband loved her and took care of them. And that was the most that she could hope for. And that's the way it was. And so I had no choice. I left. I went and talked to the RCMP, a small town. I went and talked to the local detachment. And they said, we can go out there to the farm, but without, physical proof. Like if she were to show up in hospital with cuts and bruises and signs of rape, then we could act on that. But, even if she tells us, unless at that time, and the rules were different, we'll just make it worse for her. If we go out there and confront him, unless we have enough proof to actually charge him and put him away and separate them. And with the mom not cooperating, they said, there's really nothing we can do. We feel for you and we feel for her, and we can, try and check up on her and look in on her. But, we can't go riding in there like in the movies and, handcuff him and drag him away. It just doesn't work that way. And of course, the stepdad was told that I knew. So that was the end of her coming for lessons. And he went the other way every time I saw him. So I never got to deal with him directly on that after I left the house in the yard there. I did get a very beautiful dog that day is on my way out. He was, I heard yelping coming from the granary, and he was actually in the granary beating this puppy with a gunny sack to toughen it up. So I took the dog and said, your bill's done. This is my dog now. And he didn't say anything. And that was it. So like you say, I really hope that she got help. I really hope that the situation rectified itself. But at that time, for me, there was nothing more that I knew what to do or how to do it. I had talked to her mother and I talked to the police. And
what else can you do? Right?
I don't know. I still don't know, Al. And, that's, I look back at that and I think, what could have I done? Should have I handled it somehow differently? Did I put her in more harm? Because quite honestly, I acted more out of my feeling on the situation than maybe her feeling of the situation. I maybe could have. And at that point, I of course I said, well, what do you want me to do? And she shrugged her shoulders, and that, she had no idea, as you said, probably disassociated from the situation. So I think often that in that situation, people try and they try and do their best, but we have to accept that sometimes there's nothing we can do, and we may even make the situation worse. I don't know. I don't think that's a reason not to try. And I may get flamed for not doing things right or making the situation worse. But I think that when people are in those situations, good people try their best. Ordinary people try their best. And maybe that's all we can do.
Yeah. And you know what? Probably there's more resources, more supports today than there was 30 years ago, whenever that was, roughly 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And then, further, I don't know, have you ever heard of the Amethyst Program in Lethbridge?
No, I haven't. No. What's that?
So an Amethyst Program, I think it's a very cool thing. Obviously, it's a very traumatic event for a woman to be raped. And then, what do I do now? Do I press charges? Do I, there's a whole bunch of emotional gut wrenching type decisions to make, right? So with the Amethyst Program, what they do is they collect the physical evidence and then just basically store the physical evidence in a safe way so that the woman has some time to kind of think through what she wants to do, and if she wants to subject herself to the the court process and all how that's going to flow, kind of a thing. But at least then the physical evidence is still preserved, so that if she does go to that, then the physical evidence is going to be crucial to prove, this did happen. Here's the here's the example, here's the DNA to show that it did, right? The other thing that I was just thinking, you and I might think of this girl's mom and say, what a terrible mother. What a horrible woman. But she said to you, you don't know, and we don't, right? I mean,
Yeah.
man, there's sometimes people, that are women especially, who are in a really tough place where all of the money is the guy's money. All the cars are the guy's cars. All the house is the guy's house. All the friends are the guy's friends, right?
Yeah.
So what options, it's kind of like an economic form of slavery. What can she do, right? She's really, and also they often, guys in those kind of situations, will try and shut off any other sources of support for that person, right? So that that it's a really, really tough place to be. I'm sure.
I was smiling, and it was inappropriate, but the reason I was smiling is because, as you know, I have two 19-year-old daughters, my twins, and just the other day, I was shaking my head because one of them and I had butted heads a few times, and anyone who knows me knows I'm pretty passionate, but I don't usually win, and I was reminded that I had raised them that way on purpose, and I always swore that my daughters were never gonna take crap from men, and that they were going to be able to look after themselves. And
so they're not taking no crap from you.
No, not from this guy, which is a good sign. Probably they won't take it from another guy, but yeah, I was reminded that was my doing, and it was done on purpose. But I know, and you look back in history, that would have been a really inappropriate way to raise a young girl, until very recently. Sure. In the past, that was not an appropriate way for a young girl to behave.
No.
And in no way do I think that's right, but you can't rewrite history. That was simply the truth.
No, exactly.
I think another area that, I know we're really focused on kids here in this program, but different generations have different experiences with abuse and with trauma and with how society reacts to that. As you were talking about, in the example that I gave of the young girl that was being molested by her stepfather, is there's laws in place now where the police can actually do things without, and maybe they were then too, I have no idea, but I do know now that, if the police believe that there's something happening, they have powers that they didn't have before to do those kind of things. And I think that we have to recognize too that there's a lot of grandmas and moms and dads and granddads that are walking around out there with a lot of unresolved childhood trauma. That little kiddo never goes away. I think you would agree with me, and the fact that your kiddo and my inner kiddo have gone shooting and played a lot together. We sort of have to admit that exists in all of us, and I think that in a lot of people that hurt, scared child still exists. And because there was a time when getting help was looked down upon as well.
Agreed. And that's what you're bringing up. I'm studying now. I've been taking some instruction from this lovely woman, Corinne Jansen at Lethbridge Family Services. So her, my daughter, my wife, and Kim Davis have been trying to teach me this for a couple of years. I'm starting to finally learn it. Basically, the long and the short of it is, you and I were socially conditioned about the man box and the woman flower. And the man box, what are men about, Scott? What things identify a man? Old school thoughts about men.
Well, that's a hard question because my parents were divorced and I didn't see my dad for like 6 years growing up. So I identified very young, the young Scott, that I needed to learn how a man behaved. And quite honestly, I used to watch the news because the anchors on the news were men that seemed to be respected, and they seemed to have, people looked up to them. And for me, and my grandfathers were brilliant men, and I don't know how they got such crap for my dad and me as a grandkid and stuff, but they were really, really gentlemen. But it was that was a time when it was, men were to be strong, men were not to talk about their feelings, men were to
Men don't ask for
earn.
help, right? Men don't ask
Exactly.
for help. Men
Yeah.
like don't. You get you get like three emotions. You're happy, sad, or you're mad.
Well,
That's it.
even sad wasn't so permissible, right?
True,
Like,
true,
stoic was about as far as you went, right? Like,
exactly.
at a funeral, I still didn't see many men, when I was growing up, shed a tear at a funeral, or those things. It just wasn't allowed. And I guess growing up, and later, my dad played an important part of my life. But for when my parents were first divorced, I didn't see him. He remarried and had another family and things. So I didn't have that role model. But yeah, I think that that's really stuck in our heads. However you got that, society told us. If you look at advertising and you look at the male and female imagery of the time, that it's quite shocking now. We look at it, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think that we need to be aware of that when we're working with people, that their understanding could be quite different than ours, even though they're not that much older or younger than we are. What's acceptable now is far different than what was acceptable when you and I were, kids' age, and so I'm really aware, trying to understand the pandemic through the twins' eyes rather than my own, because there is a lot of generational difference, and the things that they accept as normal that are not normal to me, innately, yes, I understand them now, but far different from my experience, right? Far different from your experience. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that back to the man box, like you identified, those are the, you're saying I didn't know because my dad wasn't around, but
yeah,
those are the things, right, that you and I were taught.
yeah,
Men are strong. Men don't cry. Men don't ask for help.
yeah,
Those are things you're taught. And if you're going to insult another man, you would refer to them as a girl, or that you would say, somehow you would say, oh, like, you're not a man, you're a girl, and therefore that's a big insult to you, right? Okay, so
right.
what is that? The message there is that women are inherently less than men, right? That in that respect, they're less. And obviously that's not a healthy kind of way to go through life. There's women who are strong enough to kick the shit out of me,
Yeah,
and can run faster and are smarter. And there's women who could do everything I do better than I do it. That's the reality of it. But the whole notion about women being less than, and I think all of really, for somebody to lay hands on somebody else, I think they have to have in their mind that they're less than. And if you think about it in terms of even, military or wars, that kind of a thing, right? What do? They try and depersonalize. This is not a person. This is a whatever, and come up with names that are very insulting about those people. And then, and they're not human, or they're not, you can shoot them because it's totally fine. Right. So, and then anyways, it's just kind of that cycle, if that continues, is the problem. And I think we're becoming more aware of that. Like, I mean, the whole ACEs research has been out since 1998, right? And I don't think there's a lot of people that still don't know about it, but the relationship between unchecked adverse childhood experiences and poor life outcomes in terms of health, in terms of relationships, in terms of being able to learn are huge. But there's ways to resolve, to go back with them. And part of it, when you're talking about little Scott, 10-year-old Scott getting slammed around the house, and it was worse when Wayne, is that his name? Wayne? Yeah. When he was around the house more, right? If he didn't go to work for some reason and you didn't go to school, that was a really bad day. And then you relate that to the pandemic, right? Man, you're stuck in your house with your abuser. You're in a really bad place. So
I was thinking about that today, and I was actually talking to Fleur. As of course, the teachers hear all this yesterday, and then today they're in there trying to get ready for teaching, at a distance and all that kind of stuff. And Fleur was actually saying that the schools remain open, and kids that need help with their schoolwork are still welcome to go into the school and get help at the school. And of course, when I hear that, I'm thinking, oh, that's, first I've heard of that. And, there may be caveats on that. I'm not putting it out there like it's fact, but, that was their understanding as of an hour or so ago. And I was happy to hear that the schools are still there and they're still open for kids who need to go into the school and get help. So, if there's somebody that being at home is a dangerous situation or a situation that results in bad things happening, there's still opportunities, out there that can be had. And it's the idea that you're trapped, I think, is part of being a child. And I think that that's the one thing that children that have gone through any kind of abuse or trauma learn way too early, that they're stuck in a situation. And most kids feel really free. Yes, their parents tell them when to go to bed and what they can eat, what they can't eat, but there's a real sense of freedom there. There's a sense of, I don't have all these responsibilities. I don't have all of these things to deal with. But kids who've gone through that trauma or ACEs, they know that they're in a situation that they're not empowered to get out of. And there's really no way, running away, and there's things that kids try to get out of that situation. And unfortunately, some of them end very badly. Suicide rates and those types of things are horrific and saddening. And some of it comes down to the bottom line, that they feel trapped in a situation that they're in and they don't feel there's any way out of it, or they've attached shame and their own self-worth to it and their own value to it. And so they don't believe that there's value in their own life and what's happening. So I think that we have to be really, really careful that we try and provide first the message that their life is valuable, and that whatever they're suffering right now, to hold on to hope. Things will get better. And I always like to saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. You're just not out of it yet. And I found that to be true in my own life, and observed it in other people's lives.
Well, you have had some pretty substantial challenges before you that I'm going to suggest a lot of people that you've experienced would just say, fold up the card and say, yeah, I'm done, I'm out. Like, this is too hard. But you are a soldier, you are a trooper. You're going to make it happen.
I did give up once in a foreign country, laying in a hospital, running a fever, where I could hear the doctor saying, yeah, he's going to have brain damage. Some of you may think I do have brain damage. I don't know. I seem to function okay. Basically, they were pouring ice on top of me, saying that, this was going to be my last kick at the cat. For just a quick second, I said, God, please let this end. And I feel bad about that. Because I think that life is wonderful, and I think that life is a tremendous gift, and that everyone out there has had trials and tribulations and things yet to come that'll challenge us, and that'll really push us to the limits of what we think we can endure. But you can endure it, and if you're hopeful and you keep going, you get out eventually. And I'm always amazed, and I look at people with severe conditions in their own lives. We've seen people that have genetic diseases or disabilities, and they're missing limbs, or people that have gone to war and have been ravaged by injury. And there's so many examples of how life is wonderful, and that the quality of life we may not be able to understand in other people, and sometimes we can't even appreciate our own quality of life. But I genuinely believe that if you can keep hope, if you can keep faith, and keep moving forward, that you will get out of it. And I think that, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to interject and just say, and I think further to that is just to be focused on your abilities and what you can do, not what you cannot do, and also not to compare yourself. You have your experience, so have your experience as best as you can. There was a guy a couple of years ago that I watched, and he had like flippers for his arms and his legs, and he modified a tractor so he could go around and do work in the fields, kind of a thing. And he was like, great. This brought him great joy, great value, and great. He was a contributor. He felt like, he was contributing. He was making a difference. And even though you look at him and say, well, this guy can't do nothing. Here, he just found a way. He'd crawl up on the thing, and he had ladders and ropes and blocks on the pedals so he can make it work. And so he was focused on what he could do, not what he couldn't do.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can make this work, right? So I think that's part of it as well.
Well, I've been very blessed. I wished for my twins when I was about 12. I read a book about twin girls and their father and the complexities of their relationships, about how they could, obviously there was a connection between them that their father couldn't be a part of, and how they worked out everything and faced the anyway. So I said, oh boy, I would really love to have twins when I have kids, and wishes do come true. I had identical twins, and they've been a real eye opener for me because, genetically you pull DNA from one, you can't tell which one you've got DNA from. They fingerprint them at the hospital so that they can tell them apart. It's the only way they can tell them apart, right? Is your fingerprints are different. Of course, as they get older, they take on their own style, so they look different and they move different and whatever, but they have their own gifts, and they're not the same people. They, one has a gift in one area and another one has an area in another area. And of course they do, because they're people just like me and you and like everyone else. And I think that really comes down to not comparing yourself to anyone else, because, I know that a DNA sequencer can't tell my twins apart, but anyone who knows them can easily tell them apart, because they each have their own gifts and they each have their own special way of seeing the world around them and bringing love and joy and hope to the people in their lives. And, if people that are so identical that they were one egg that split into two, and the genetic material is identical, and if you can't compare those people, how on earth can you compare me and you? How can I sit there and say, oh, well, Alan, it's ridiculous. And exactly. I've been very fortunate to see that. And, you've worked with the twins, and you know how different they are and how special they are, and their own challenges and their own ways. And if identical twins have different gifts and different challenges, then, and they can't compare themselves to each other, and you can't compare, oh, well, your sister can do this, why can't you do this? Well, because they're not the same people.
No, exactly.
And I think that really drives home the point you're making about we can't compare ourselves when we're facing those trials and tribulations in our own life. We can't say, oh, well, this is much harder on me, or it's, even if it goes the other way and say, oh, well, this isn't so bad, as you said, I was saying earlier, those things are really invalid, because it is what it is, and you are what you are, and that's enough. Like you keep telling me, you are enough. You're equipped to handle what you have to handle, and part of that comes down to having some faith in yourself. And I think that most people are a little bit liars when it comes to their own self-image and how positively we view ourselves and our own self-esteem. I think we all, when there's no one around and we're looking in the mirror, there's things that we say, oh boy, this could be better, or I wish I could do this, or I think that's human nature, right?
I don't think you know me very well. I have way more self-esteem than probably I should be by looking at me. But yeah. Matter of fact, I think part of this is like something you teach yourself. So Scott, so Scott, tomorrow morning when you get out of bed and you go into the bathroom for the first time, you look in the mirror and you say, oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way.
Yeah, and who sang that song, Al?
Matt Davis, I think it was.
Yeah. I have a really interesting story about his brother sometime,
Let's hear it.
is also singing up here. He had a problem, and I was working at Cook County at the time, and I was it's how I helped pay for a university. I was bouncing and bartending there, and I was lugging beef out at the plant, doing both to build up some money to go back to university here. I went to college in the U.S. first, and then I came back up here and worked for a while, and then decided I want to go back to school. And he would only drink Jim Beam, and so to keep him from other substances, we were quite happy to feed him Jim Beam because it was the lesser of evils. So I had to take a road trip down to the Bab Bar across the line and pick up Jim Beam with him. And he sang the whole way down. A great singer. And he's very happy and content. And it was a very interesting road trip. I got to take with him and I. Yes. And this is a family show, so I can't tell everything that went on during that trip. But
fair enough.
It was like, have you ever seen the movie Get Him to the Apollo?
Yes, I have. Yes, with Russell Brand. Yeah.
Yes, I felt like that guy. Getting him down there, getting the Jim Beam, and getting back up in one piece in time for the show. Yeah, that was quite an ordeal.
So are you saying this was Mac Davis, the guy who sang that song?
I'm very careful what I say.
Fair enough.
Names to it. Yeah. He has a family member who also sings.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good. I did not know that. So anyways.
Anyway.
So anyways, I guess what we're saying that people are unique. People have unique talents and gifts and abilities, and that they should focus on those and find those people who value and appreciate the talents and skills that they have, right? Find the tribe of people who are going to say, that's amazing. I appreciate you. Let's do this together, or let's, make a change. Let's change the world. How about that?
As a parent, I have to say that that's 100% right. Unfortunately, we're in a time where there's predators looking for children who are looking for exactly that experience.
Valid point.
And I've, as you know, I've worked in digital security and digital media for years. I'm older than I look. Actually, I'm probably exactly as old as I look, but I always tell myself I'm older than I look. And, I've seen the utter darkness that some people represent, and they're absolutely predators that are just looking for vulnerable people, looking for a tribe or somebody to believe in them. And it's so important that parents or uncles or big brothers, big sisters, the neighbors, that there's somebody that's doesn't want anything in return, that isn't, that's willing to say, I care and I'm here for you. I might be limited in what I can do, right, but I care and I'm here.
Right. And they're there to be of value to that little human being and not to themselves. There's no benefit for them other than, the feeling that you have when you help somebody, which is a real thing, right? There's dopamine, there's oxytocin, there's all kinds of things that say, hey, that was a pleasurable experience, to make a difference, to make this person smile, to make this person laugh. Those are all like super valuable things that we can do.
Yeah. And I as I said, my mom pretty much raised my brother and I until I left home. My brother stayed at home longer than I did. And, learned so much from her, a single mom, and how hard she had to work. And I know that she was very, cognizant of the fact that we were growing up without our dad around us, even though he was fine. Sorry. And so, she was always trying to help us get involved in things and get involved in groups. And we got lucky. Everyone that we got involved with was on the up and up. We weren't abused in any way. We weren't assaulted in any way. But boy, thinking back on it, there was so many opportunities that things could have gone so dark so quickly, because not only were we vulnerable, but my mom was vulnerable in that she was trying to do her best as a single parent. And she really wanted, us to have experiences that she couldn't give us. and, you know, have those things to make sure that we grew up to be, you know, decent contributing members of society, and men that weren't, you know, abusive or those things. But, you know, again, everyone is in that vulnerability cycle. And I think that we have to realize that, and you brought up that earlier, is that you can't just blame the adult in the situation. You know, it may look like they're not doing anything or they're part of the problem, but they may be in their own situation. And, you know, even
parenting, I think you'll agree. Parenting is hard work. Parenting, nobody gets it right. Nobody gets parented right. You are both a blessing and a curse to your child, is what Joyce Irvin says. So yes.
Yes. And my mom always used to tell me that she couldn't wait till she was old and that we had to look after her. And that was her payback. She put herself in a home this year. So she didn't mean it, obviously, because there's other people helping her out now. She just had her 75th birthday 5 days ago. So
nice. She's doing pretty good.
Had a good hard 75. She's like me. She's lived a lot for the years on the calendar, but she's doing well and in good shape. So we're happy to celebrate that. But I think it is important, you're saying, Alan, that, you know, the show is about being champions for kids, but we also have to realize that, you know, there's probably people caught up in that web that would do anything they could to help, but they don't have the resources. Or like me, when I was, you know, 20 and was confronted with a situation, I tried to do the right thing. You know, I brought it to who I thought somebody who could help. When that didn't work, I took it to the authorities, and they said, you know, well, it's good. Now we're aware that if she ever comes to us, then, you know, we know that it's, you know, there's a history here. But I think that with everything that's going on, we have to, you know, keep a place in our hearts, not just for the victims, but also the people that are caught up around them and may care very much and may not be bad people, but don't have what they need to take action, or they're caught up in their own pain and their own suffering, and they can't see past that to see how they can help someone else. And I know a lot of people, you know, like you, we've been involved in fundraising and helping people see things as volunteers and get things done. And often people think they have to wait until they have too much before they can give any. And you and I know that's the wrong way around. That how you get enough is by giving, and that fills you up. It, you know, it gives you opportunities to grow and change in ways where you really, you know, you benefit as a person and you help as a person. So I look around at COVID and I hear stories, and I think that there's a lot of people caught right now that are good people and that want to help and do good things, but they're scared and they're oppressed by the situation. And
you know what? Maybe they don't think that they can make a difference. Maybe they don't think they make a difference either. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely agree. And, you know, I just hear from so many people that I'm just, you know, I'm barely holding on, and my business is barely holding on, and I'm barely keeping my, you know, stuff together. And, you know, most of those people don't believe they have anything to give, because they're so, and it's not that they're selfish, they're genuinely just trying to hold their world together. But sometimes, you know, it's an old cliche. Sand runs faster through a clenched fist. And some ways the best way to help ourselves is by helping somebody else, is by just letting go a little bit and saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to take a couple hours out of my schedule and I'm going to help somebody else at that time. You know, no, I have other things I should be doing. I have other things that I have to do. You know, I'm behind my business. You know, I own a restaurant, and they said we could have outdoor, and I built a patio, and now I can't use the patio. You know, and I would just say to those people, try and find some time to give, and it'll change how you feel. And it's the best kind of medicine for what we have now. Is I think really the cure for not COVID itself, but the cure for the social ills we're feeling is giving and caring and spreading hope. And that makes us all healthier and happier.
I agree. Well said, Scott. I was going to say, I was in a thing by the Tamarack Institute today about basically it was mostly about universal basic income, and their thing is communities ending poverty. And of course, poverty is a huge part of ACEs, right? Like, I mean, if your family doesn't have enough money to get food on the table and to and they maybe can't pay bills and mortgages, and then you're on the street, and those kind of things. So poverty obviously is a huge thing. So what they were
Hierarchy of
saying,
needs, right?
hierarchy and even exactly what they were saying, I thought was so nice, so beautiful, is that prior to COVID, there'd been a much more concentrated effort to end poverty and had huge results. Some communities where their poverty levels were cut in half, right? Which there's still poverty, but pretty significant difference if you can go from 24% poverty to 12% poverty, right? So
Wow.
so they were making these big gains, right? And then COVID came along, and these guys now they're looking at this to say, this is the perfect opportunity. Now we're exposing all the cracks. We're exposing the truly vulnerable people that we have, and we've added a whole bunch more vulnerable people just with the real, what COVID is, right? And if you're in the restaurant or you're in the hospitality business, and these are like, if that's your job, that's your career, this is tough go right now, right? So then basically the thought is that they need to get to a universal basic income. And I think I agree. I can't see any way that we can move forward post COVID to keep people healthy and engaged and having good lives is without it. Like, I just can't see how we can do it. So, and money is just something that we made up. It's a concept we made up. Let's figure this stuff out and make sure that people have housing and people have food, and then like whatever has to happen to make those things happen, then that's what we need to get done.
Well, my illness and being sick took a lot of independence away from me, and
Sure.
and that was really hard. Took a lot of dignity away from me, and that's really hard. We equate being a man is to keep your dignity, die with dignity, do those kind of things we all hear when we're young, but I see young people now, and their ability to be self-reliant, their ability to to get out a job and strike out on their own, and that the dignity that comes with that has completely evaporated. Young people right now, what sort of jobs can young people get? Most young people are employed in the service industry for their first jobs. There is no service industry right now. I mean, unless you're doing box fulfillment at Amazon or one of the big stores that have been able to stay open. And I think that that's taken a lot of independence and self-reliance and the feeling that I'm the captain of my own destiny away from young people. And by young, basically anyone that isn't established or those of us that are in our own businesses are of course facing challenges, but we have a place to go, a thing to do every day, even if it's just to go in and dust off the shelves or whatever needs to be done. But when we look at young people, there's a whole huge group of young people that should be getting summer jobs and that should be experiencing their that first independence that comes from getting your own paycheck, and starting to think about, well, if I move out and when I move out and what I'm going to do. And I think that that's been taken away, and that's
and also, just to interject one thing, and also their normal kind of relationships that they would have with their peers, right? Like, I mean, this is not it's not the experience you and I had as a young person, right? Like, with the socializing that we would do. So you're on a roll there. Carry on, Scott.
No, and I was just thinking that we're putting a future at risk. And, of course, we hear a lot in the news about economics. We hear a lot about COVID deaths. But I see a much, much, much broader and maybe more insidious situation happening in that sense of self-reliance and independence, and not relying on the system, not relying on your parents. And that we learn through experience, right? You look at in the animal kingdom, mom throws the chicks out of the nest, and eventually they have to either fly or fall. And I hope it's not that way with most kids, but most kids, you and I made a decision when to leave home, and we took a job and earned money, and we gained independence and self-reliance from that. Where now I've seen some interviews, and of course, the girls work, but that work is in recreation. So there's been on and off again when they can work and when they can't work, and it's creating a generation, I think, that's missing the opportunity to develop a sense of business self-reliance, a sense of developing, living within your own means and generating your own income, and all of the things that are really necessary to keep society ticking along in a way that we consider normal. And I'm very concerned about the broader implications of that. And of course, right now there's people that have to worry about right now and keeping their businesses going and trying to survive, but I'm always thinking of the future. Maybe I'm on the downside of the age hill. I don't know. When you reach 50ish, you sort of start looking at its life expectancy and how much time do I have left, and then you look at 20-year-olds and you think, boy, you've got a lot to slog through here still. Mm-hmm. And I'm really worried that as governments are focused on COVID-19, they're focused on economy, and really what we're not seeing, I think, is we're not seeing a concerted effort to try and return some sense of I'm in control of my own future to the generation that's coming up and getting ready to take their place in society and take over eventually and guide society. And I don't have an answer about how we do that, but I think that globally, when we're seeing it happen all around the world, we have a whole generation that basically most kids have to live at home right now. They finding a job right now, if you were 20 and you had to find a job that you could support yourself on with all of the restrictions and caveats on doing things, I don't know what you would do.
Yeah.
Really. So I think that we have that coming up, and I think that that's where the social programs and education and trying to not only help those that have been suffered through ACEs, but I see that societal wide, there's a traumatic experience that's happening to a generation. And when you paint that with big strokes, yes, they have enough food. Yes, they're being well cared for. Yes, they're living with people that love them. Yes, they have the internet, they have television, they have all of those things, but they don't have the opportunity to become their own individual person in the way that we all did, in terms of, getting out there, getting a job, learning that you can make it on your own and survive on your own and do those things.
So me being the optimist I am, the world has changed, definitely.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
There's going to be, with that change, with that crisis, there's new opportunities that will come as well. And if part of this opportunity is that people have enough earnings to meet their basic needs, so that they can pursue their individual form of expression, whatever it is there that we need, their voice that we need to hear, their actions that we need to see, their drawings that we need to watch, their videos that those kind of things, whatever that unique expression for them is, that maybe then we'll have the opportunity, or this is the way I see it, that we'll have the opportunity that the world's going to change, but we're going to make sure that people get looked after, and then people can look different lives than what was in the past, but maybe better lives, maybe a little bit more simple, but maybe a little bit more creative. And I think as well, it might be where things like where we used to go and pay a ticket to watch some girl sing or some guy sing, that now instead we sing ourselves. Because the professional sports, professional entertainers that would draw huge dollars to go see them. Well, the reality is, if you do it, if singing is, again, or playing the guitar is the thing that's important to you, you play the guitar, even if you don't play it as good as the best guitar, Joe Bonamassa or whatever his name is, the best guitar players, you will have way more satisfaction in doing it yourself.
I agree completely. And I think that, and that's where I was headed, is that it's going to take a shift in expectations.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're talking about. I know when I came back from Japan, 14 years of living there, I was surprised that every driveway seemed to have an RV vehicle and a boat in it. And, I was just, because in Japan, that's just not a reality. And so there's not an expectation that people work towards or have. You know, I remember when I came into Lethbridge and I was driving through the residential section, I was surprised, you know, boat camper, boat camper, boat camper. And, you know, that was great, but that was at a time and a place that is no longer viable, as you said. And I think that it's going to take a shift. And I think that as humans, we've proven how resilient we are and how adaptable we are. People always get Charles Darwin wrong. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the most adaptable. And if you go back and read Charles Darwin, instead of just taking the quote that everyone says, that's what it's about. It's about the species that can adapt the fastest, the species that can adapt the best to the changing conditions around them survive. Those that can't adapt don't. And I think that humanity has proven itself to be amazing, absolutely amazing at adapting itself to whatever circumstances are presented to us. So I think that everything that's going on, as you said, it is what it is. And we're going to have to adapt as a society to put ourselves in a position where it's healthy and we're happy and we're maintaining that hopeful existence that keeps living such a enjoyable experience, even when it's not so much fun.
And you know what? If you think of somebody in your life that might be alone, might need a phone call, might need a little bit of support and encouragement, pick up the phone, shoot them a text, hit them on Instagram, do whatever you do to connect with them and say, hey, hi, thinking of you. How you doing? Do you want to talk? Right? Even if it's on video is still good. It's always a pleasure seeing Mr. Sweetman's face. So
yours, Al. I was really noticing that how people are stepping up and creating content, exactly as you said. You know, I don't, yes, I do listen to professional music, but in terms of content produced by people, you know, they could be living next door. I don't know where they live, but dancing, singing, dressing up, acting, you know, the whole genre.
I think it's great. We should all do it instead of watch somebody do it. Do it ourselves.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. I haven't decided yet what I want to inflict on society. So I'm still just a consumer, but I do agree. And I think that's what the new generation is stepping up. They are creators. I think as a group, they're far more into creating than we are. They may not be more creative. I think that there was a lot of stifled creativity. But, you know, when we were growing up, going back to that, well, if you wanted to be an artist, you didn't say it too loudly, right? Or you were asked. I remember my uncle asking me, and I love my uncle. He's a great man. I worship him basically. And, you know, I said, I want to take a history degree. And he looked at me and he said, oh, okay. And what job does that let you do? And I said, I don't know, but I love history. So I want to study history. And he just he's like, wow. You know, and his in his own head, I can see him thinking, do you have any idea what you're going to spend on that? Not to have some game plan to get that money back. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that the next generation, our kids, are a lot freer from that mentality that you have to financially get back for everything you do, that there's other rewards.
Right. Just the act of creating itself is its reward, right? And so I think that we're going to see an upsurgence in that, what you've already experienced. And I think that's going to happen. And I'm optimistic that COVID will be the catalyst that we start treating human beings, all of us human beings, as better in terms of that everybody's got food, everybody's got shelter, everybody's valued. And then we want to hear, we want to see their contribution of everybody, right? So that is what I hope will happen. And I think there's good likelihood. Everybody's looking at this. Not everybody. I've heard many people look at this as we're at a junction point. We're going to go really good, and life is going to get better for more people. There's going to be less poverty and more health and more creativity and more life will be better, or things will get dark. It'll be like the
dystopian
movies
society,
we see about the future, the ones that are, oh my, that's not going to be good. But yes,
or it might be a combination of both, right?
Probably.
Who
Hey
knows?
Scott, we're well over an hour here. You and I, we get rolling, man. So we should say goodbye to our guests. Thank you for joining me. Levi Cox will be with me another time.
Excellent. I'll look forward to that talk too. Thanks very much, Al. And I love that you're always positive, buddy. You always